Hi everyone, I hope you're all keeping well. Thanks for joining us for another of FlowForma's exclusive virtual workshops today, where you'll once again see a significant business process digitized in under 1 hour. My name is Conor McGrath. I'm Digital Marketing Exec here at FlowForma, and I'll be your host for today's session. We're really excited about today's webinar. I think it's going to be a good bit of fun. These usually are, so let's get cracking. Okay, so once again, I am delighted to be joined by my colleagues, David Shanley, who's Product Specialist at FlowForma, and Stewart Miller, who is Territory Manager here at FlowForma. And once again, we wanted to give you an insight into how easy it is to use the FlowForma process automation tool, and how it allows you to digitize your processes quickly, gain rapid adoption, and get an early return on your investment too. So some really key outcomes from today, hopefully. And again, we asked for today to our audience members just to interact as much as possible, and please take part in any of the polls that we have coming up. And again, hopefully Stewart and David can help you out with any questions you may have that you submit via the chat box, and the guys can discuss these along the way for you. So with that in mind, let's kick off our first poll. I suppose it's just to find out where everyone is logging in from today. I suppose it's a nice way to see where everyone is in the world. So I'm just going to pull that up on the screen for you now. So we usually have a nice diverse mix of attendees for these events, so it's always interesting to see where everyone's logging in from. I might just give you another 10 seconds on that. Another 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm just going to close that. I'm just going to share on the screen where we're all signing in from today. So it seems to be a lot of the Americas today, and some Europe too. So good morning to everyone in the Americas. Okay, so we've got quite a diverse mix, as I mentioned. So a warm welcome again to you all for joining us today. And okay, so the results are in, and as you know, before today we asked you all which process you would like to see digitized, and as you can see, we've had a clear winner, a landslide winner. I think with 46% of the votes wanting to see an approval process automated during today's workshop session today. Hopefully that's something, guys, that we can get done within the hour, and I've got all my confidence and faith in both of you anyway. But yeah, clear winner on that. But I do know that the guys have some different features of the tool that will cover off some of those questions you may have for expenses, return to office, and travel requests too. So and additionally, we did also ask if you had any process challenges in particular yourselves individually for your own businesses that you're currently struggling with, or just maybe challenging. So I just have a few of these listed here. So I know Alma is looking for, or she has siloed and manual challenges, which I know are very common. John mentioned that risk mitigation and effort reduction is one of the challenges that they're facing. Debbie is struggling with cumbersome and paper-heavy processes, which is a real pain point for several companies and organizations across the globe. So that's a really prevalent one. And there's another one here: paper forms routing among offices is a challenge. Yep, again, that's something we see on a regular. And Rajiv is also struggling with approval and expenses workflows. Well, Rajiv, you're in the right place today, considering we're going to tackle that approval process hopefully today, and hopefully some of the expenses pieces will also will feature in there for you as well. Okay, so we know the process that's ahead of us, and we know what your process challenges are. I'm going to hand it over now to Stewart and Dave. I'm going to let you take it from here, guys.
Thanks, Conor.
Thank you, Conor. Thanks, and welcome everybody. I know we have a lot of attendees from all over the world. I know in the registrants we had from both sides of the world. So you saw a lot of people attending from the States and South America and Europe, but we've also had registrants from the likes of Australia, Malaysia, India, Middle East. So we have a real cross-section across the globe, as well as industries. Real cross-section Professional and financial services are joining us today. Members from construction, manufacturing, hotelier industry, electronics, public sector, and logistics. There's a lot of diverse industries and markets there. One thing is common, as Connor went through some of the comments there, you've all got process challenges, and there seems to be a lot of the use of the word manual. So today is about showing you a tool that you can easily digitize processes. And you don't need to be a member of the IT department. You do not need coding expertise because this is a no-code solution. So we run these webinars every quarter. This is the fourth one we've done. They've all been very successful. Dave has successfully managed to digitize 3 other processes, so he's got the challenge of the approval process today. And whilst the approval process, as Connor says, chosen might not be your specific choice, you'll actually learn a lot about the flexibility and capability of the solution, even if it was travel requests or the expenses. So to get things started, before I hand over to Dave, I'd just like to give you a sort of a high-level introduction as to the solution and what our customers are actually using the solution for. The great thing is there are no boundaries. Okay, so here is just a cross-section of some of the processes that our customers are digitizing for themselves. So you can see them in each department. You'll see some of these spread across functionally. So we're getting into a level of sophistication and complexity that FlowForma can deal with, as well as the simple. And you also see some flows there that include external organizations. So you can do end-to-end flows here, not only internally, but you can include some suppliers, customers, contractors, etc. But as I say, no boundaries. Next slide, please, Connor. Okay, so Dave's going to be spending quite a bit of time in what's called the Flow Designer. So this is a 3-in-1 user interface that combines forms, flows, and workflow, all in the same single user interface. It's very easy, very quick to use, and hopefully you'll get rather excited with the prospect of being able to digitize flows so quickly. Next flow, please, Connor. Okay, and the system is very deep and wide. So I'm not going to go into this in any depth. We'll save that for a later date, because ideally what we want to do is talk to you on a one-to-one basis and let you know what high capability there is in the solution. But you can control the release of flows into the business. You can create service level timings over how long a flow should take, and you can have insight and management performance over what that looks like. So there's a lot of depth to the actual tool here. You're going to see some of it because the purpose of today is just to introduce the actual solution to you. But there's much more to come. This is just a taster, and what we'd like to do is talk to you on a one-to-one basis. Next one, please, Connor. What the tool enables you to do is customize the flow to exactly what you want. Okay, so the flexibility and agility of being able to spin a process up, release it into the business, and change it iteratively, and release is empowered into your hands. So whilst Dave is going to show you quite a simple approval process today, that's the one you've requested, capable to do very complex and sophisticated workflow flows as well. On average, you're looking at about 4 weeks from starting to digitize a flow to release it into the business. So the time to value is very, very fast, and you can design the process as you want it to look like, and surface that up in terms of a user portal. So the user experience is very good. So you will get high adoption as well. So that, as I say, there are no boundaries to this. Next one, please, Connor. Okay, so the user portal, you can design and customize that to the way you want to look. The actual flows, and how many steps, if there are subsequent steps or parallel steps in there, if there's tables, different types of questions, different workflows, you can digitize that for heart's content in a self-sufficient manner very, very quickly. And as soon as you've done that, it's available on mobile devices. So if you're iOS, Android, etc., it's readily available for that. So anybody, at any time, anywhere in the world can actually take part in the process. So that's just a very sort of high level introduction into the actual solution itself. I'm now going to hand over to Dave, who's now going to digitize that approval process within an hour. And he has 100% record of success to keep up. Good luck, Dave.
Thank you, Stewart. So hopefully you should be able to see my dashboard here. All good? So can you see that dashboard there, Connor?
Yep, all good.
Okay, yep. Perfect. So the process we're going to digitize, folks, is the approval process. But again, as Stewart mentioned, you know, expenses process, travel request process, they all require approval as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of a hybrid build that's going to kind of bring in functionality and capabilities that touch on all of those processes. So you're going to be building from this environment here, which is the dashboard for the FlowForma desktop app. This is where the FlowForma administrator, the person doing the build, is going to be going to do the physical process build. And then end users will then be creating instances of that process build, and that's a form essentially. Now the end user isn't going to be going in here. The end user is going to be going into a dashboard to surface up, for example, in SharePoint Teams. So Teams site or Teams app and so on. Now, the dashboard here allows you to go in and create new processes, edit pre-existing processes. So one thing to be mindful of with FlowForma is we use SharePoint essentially as a content database. You have a data blob here of all forms created in this environment. Every time there's a new form, it will get appended to this list here. And what we do is we can also publish questions through as additional columns to this default set of title through to modify. So for example, you can see one being published through for a geolocation here. So then what the end user would typically see for browser interaction would be a dashboard, something similar to this. This is a SharePoint Teams site that allows you to go in and initiate the processes here by clicking on the appropriate tile. And then it has an embedded list view, a list view from all forms of all processes and forms requiring my attention. You can have all your other additional web parts in here just to create a nice kind of holistic view of all the various different touch points that are relevant to that specific user. What you can also do as well is you can take data captured in these forms and you can create your reports. So we have a no data feed, so you can pull the data through into whatever BI tool you're using. And in this instance here, what I did was I actually I pushed the data from a health and safety process. I pushed it into a native SharePoint list and I spun up a Power BI report here. So again, the user gets a nice view of all the various different touch points that are relevant to them. So that's what the browser interface would typically look like for the end user, creating forms and engaging with FlowForma forms. We also have a Teams app, so you can engage with FlowForma via your Teams. And then we also have mobile enablement. So FlowForma has an app for both iOS and Android together with offline capabilities. So the process we're going to be building out today, again, is an approval process. And I'm going to go in here into the dashboard that the admin works off, and I'm going to show you what we're going to build first. So this is it here. I'm going to click on it. It's the approval process. And this is what the form looks like for the end user. So it's just kind of a single form user interface. You can have the name of the process sitting up in the top. You can also pull data captured from the form and sit it up here in the header portion as well. And you can also brand it, bring in your logo, and change the coloring here as well for the controls, such as the buttons here, all the way through to the step boxes to align with your own marketing needs. So currently engagement step is always in white. You can see details is highlighted here. It's the initial step in our process. We can see there's a subsequent level 1 approval step here. And we can see all the various different fields or questions that the user needs to engage with on this form. So the system is pulling in the current user, that's me, And then we have a category item questions here. Now, these are SharePoint list lookups. So I have a couple of lists sitting in the background here. Here's one of them called category. And here's another one called category item. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through these lists and we're going to be filtering and extracting information from them using cascading list lookups. So if I go in here into my first lookup question and I choose category A, my second lookup question is filtering for the chosen category and is only going to show me items associated with that category. And they're called cascading list lookups. And they're very useful to ensure the user's engaging properly with the form by controlling the data that they're engaging with. As well, you don't have to build into, say, for example, a choice question, your values here. You can maintain it in a SharePoint list. And if that information changes, then obviously, you can go back in and you can, it'll be reflected in all pre-existing forms and all forms that are created from that point onwards. This here is a choice question type. So if I choose other, we have a business rule firing here that's going to ask me what other is. And that's called a question change rule. And question change rules fire on the trigger question. So when I say triggering the question, if the user makes a selection, user keys in a value, that's recognized as an update to the question control and the rule will fire. And they're called question change rules. And they sit on the trigger question here. And that's the first business rule or workflow rule we're going to apply, sitting here on this question. What we have sitting down here is a repeating table. And repeating tables are very easy to work with in FlowForma. We take all the heavy lifting out of it, as you'll see when we do our build shortly. In this table, it's dynamic, so I can add rows and remove rows. And we're also using our cascading list lookup here as well. So my initial column is looking up a single column list called category, and I can choose my category. The second column here is filtering and only showing me items associated with that category. And we also have on this column here, this sub question, we have a get list data rule firing that's pulling through the appropriate item for that chosen item there. So I can see the details here. I can put in a cost amount here, and there's a calculations happening here under the hood too. So if I put in a cost of 10,000, I now have to bring level 2 approval into the process. See, there's a new step here. And the way it's built out in this one here is if it's greater than or equal to 1,000, we now need level 2 approval as well. So if I were just to take this back to 100, you'll see it's gone to just one approver. And it automatically calculates my total for me. So if I go for category B here, item B1, I put in €1, or you'll see here, my total is calculated here. So let's just bring this up to bring in level 2 approval as well. And I'm going to click submit. Now, when I click submit, I can fire rules as well. So again, the two different locations for your rules are question change rules, where you go to the trigger question. And then we have rules that fire at step level as well. So step level rules fire when I click submit. I can fire step completed rules, which means you're committing to moving on to the next step. Step completed rules ranged. It could be sending an email to the level 1 approver, notifying them that they have a form that requires their attention. I could be assigning the step to a specific approver and so on. So when I click submit, step completed rules fire. When I click save, I can have step saving rules fire. So there will be scenarios occasionally where you have to dip in and out of your step multiple times, in which case you might want to fire step saving rules. So when I click submit, we can be sending that email to the level 1 approver. And what we're also doing here is generating a document. And that's a Word document. So FlowForma has a plugin that installs in your local version of Word and allows you to take any pre-existing document template, which you upload into a document template library on SharePoint. You then associate it with a process. And from that point on, then you can take all these tokens here from your process build and plot them into your template, and they'll be rendered with the appropriate values. What you can also do here as well is you can apply business rules. So business logic might be around if other is chosen, show this content. So if I go into my rules tab here, you'll see I've got a business rule firing here too. Display the selected section when a specific scenario is met. So that's the document I've generated here. Very simple, but the document can be as complex and as intricate as you need it to be. That document then is generated and attached to the step. If I move through to my level 1 approval here, I can say approve, reject, or request amendment. If I say approve and click submit, it's going to move on to the next step. If I say request amendment, it's going to ask me for my comments. And again, that's another question change rule, and it fires on the trigger question. Now, if I were to say reject, we've built in here reason for rejection. So the outcome differs depending on what path you take here. And that's all built in using hide show question rules, using 100% no code, as you'll see shortly. If I were to go reject here, incidentally, when I click submit, we'll have a step completed rule fired that actually hides the last step, which means the form closes and is completed. And then obviously you'll have scenarios whereby you want to send on the reason for rejection onto the party that needs to know of it, for example, the initiator. So I'm going to go back here and going to request an amendment. And I'm going to put in my comments. And because I'm requesting an amendment, when I click submit, it's not going to move on to the next step. I have a pass back rule here, a step completed pass back rule. That's going to pass it back to the first step. And it's also going to show the comments on the first step read only. And you'll see here, it's gone back to the first step. I could be sending the initiator an email, and you can see the comments are here. So I can go in and address the comments, submit again, and it moves on again. And again, we have our document generating. And maybe this time I'm happy, I'll click approve. This time I'll click submit, and it moves on to the next step. And that's what we're going to build out. So I'm just going to close this here.
Very good.
And I'm going to go in and create a new process. What's that, Stuart? Sorry?
A couple of questions, Dave. If you've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah, shoot.
So does FlowForma support parallel steps?
100%, yeah. So we'll try and incorporate that into the build, yeah. So by default, your steps are moving sequentially, but you can set it up for steps to run in parallel as well.
Okay, and then the second question from Pauline, what document management facilities are there?
So we sit on SharePoint. So we're tightly integrated with SharePoint. That includes integration with lists and with document management as well. So you can surface up all of the capabilities around document management, routing documents, checking in, checking out documents, changing permissions, all of that good stuff. You can do all that via FlowForma, but you're governing it using business and workflow rules within a process.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
No problem. Okay, so I'm going to go in here to create a new process flow. And we're going to call this one webinar approval process. Now, when I save this here, that's going to open up Flow Designer. And as Stuart mentioned briefly there a while back, Flow Designer is a 3-in-1 toolkit. It combines your forms, your workflow, and your document generation capabilities in one single build interface. Now, the significance of that will become more apparent when you see the business and workflow rules being applied, because you're going to see them contextually sitting in the single interface, as distinct from maybe an app being rendered using Canvas drag and drop, a separate workflow component having to knit in with that. There's a lot more moving parts. It's a single interface. So what a lot of people will do when they're starting out with FlowForma as well is they'll toggle this on here and they'll have a form preview. So as I start to build out my form, you'll see it rendering in the right-hand panel here. So we're going to have 3 steps to this process. We're going to have the detail step. I'm just going to assign each step to myself just for the time being so we can move through it quickly. We're going to have our level 1 approval. And we're going to have our level 2 approval. So once you have your steps in place, what you're going to do is you're going to look to add your questions or your fields to each respective step. Then you're going to start applying your logic, your business logic and your workflow logic where you need to. So we're going to start off with our first step here. And we're going to add in, sorry, just 1 second. I'm just going to adjust my blinds here. Typical Irish weather, it started off really sunny. Now it's gone dark. So I had my blind down. So it actually went almost pitch dark. So there you go.
Four
so
seasons
details,
in one day.
yeah, in 1 hour. So here I'm on the details step here. I'm going to add my questions. So the first thing I want to capture is the requester. So this is my question title here. And you'll see all the question types that are available to me. So they align with the native SharePoint data types, such as single line of text. Then we have our own custom question types in here too. A lot of depth here, excuse me, which we're not going to be able to cover off in great detail in the call here, but I'll just go through these slowly and I'll point out a few of them to you here. This one here is looking up native SharePoint lists. That's dynamic CRM lookups, entity data management, where you can create your own entities, perform CRUD operations on those entities, SQL Server lookup there. Repeating tables, which we're going to be using in this build and are very easy to use with FlowForma. And lots more to choose from here. So what we're going to do is we're going to go with a person or group. We're going to set this to the current user. As with all questions, I can make questions mandatory, put into tooltip descriptions. And you'll see my form starting to render here in the right-hand panel. Next thing I want to capture is the category of this approval here. So again, what we're doing here is we're going to look into our list, a single column list. It's going to be a list lookup question. The list I want to extract my information from lives here. It's going to lock in for me. It's going to choose a category. So what I want to look at next is the item. So the item is going to be based on the category, and it's going to be another lookup. Only this time we're going to be looking up our category item list. So just to show you what that looks like, this is our category item list. We want to be able to go in and filter and only show items for the chosen category, in which case it'll be A1 and A2.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go back in here again, and I'm going to select my category item. I'm going to look it up in the item column, but there's a filter being applied here. The filter is going to be where the list field category equals the chosen category in my form. So I'm just going to knock this off for the moment here and just carry on building here. So we've got a requester, category, item. Next kind of question I'm going to put in here is a choice question. So what type of approval are you looking for here? So we're going to call this type. And this is going to be a choice. Different ways you can represent it, drop-down radio checkbox. We'll go to drop-down, type 1 or other. Now, if other is chosen, I need to capture what that is. So I'm going to add a question for that.
Oh, very simple.
It is. And maybe we'll capture a description. So, you know, maybe we need a bit more information around what this is. So we'll go for description. And I'm going to make that multiple lines of text. Now, most tools that are out there, you know, a lot of them are canvas-based. The creation of the actual form can be quite straightforward. Challenges around applying your business and workflow logic, and that's where FlowForma excels, as you'll see now shortly. So I'm going to add my table here first before we move on to our second step. It's our repeating table, and we're going to call this, we'll just call it details. Now, repeating tables are very easy to work with FlowForma. We do a lot of the heavy lifting out of it for you. So you'll see here, I can decide what type of table I want. So do I want this to be a dynamic table? In which case I wouldn't tick these. If I wanted it to be fixed, I would do this. And I've got my sub questions here. So my sub questions, each sub question is a column in that table. And I can apply business logic and workflow logic within this here too. So my first one is going to be a lookup. And we're going to look up the categories, same as we did previously. Only this time we're doing it within a table structure. I scroll down, pick out my list, locks in. Now I just need to save this table first before I go any further so I can apply a filter. I'm going to jump back in again. And now we're going to add our item, description, and cost. Now the item is going to be based on the chosen category in the first column of our table. So this is going to be item. Another lookup. List I want to extract the information from, again, is our category item lists. Only this time we want to extract the information from our item column, and it's subject to a filter, and the filter is going to be where the list field equals chosen category here in our first column. Now what I also want to do when I start applying my business rules is I want to be able to pull through a description of what that item is. So I'm going to leave that as single line of text. We'll be applying a business rule, pull that information through, and then we'll just add a cost. And again, there's a lot more you can do here. You can do calculations, you can have quantity, you can have rates, you can have loads of different things here that you can feed into a calculation here. I'm just going to keep it simple for the moment. Cost, number, currency. And what I want to do now is, every time I add a row to this table here, I want to be able to pull through the total cost. So I'm going to pull that out, not in the table itself, but outside the table. I'm going to have a total. And that's going to be a calculated question type. And all I'm doing there is I'm just picking out the cost here, deciding how I want to represent it. Validate that. Okay, add it. Now validate. That's good. Click save and save. Now, whilst you're building here, you can go in and just click on your test form here, and that's going to open up a test form for you. And you're going to see if everything is behaving itself as it is here. So it's all good.
Very good.
So just close that. And what I want to add here, the last thing I want to add here is, because we're going to pass this back if level 1 approval isn't granted, we want to see the level 1 approver's comments. Which I'll leave as multiple lines of text. So those are all of the questions I will need on my initial step. So moving through into the second step here, level 1 approval, I'm going to add some questions here. So let's go with our level 1 approver, which would be a person or group, set to the current user.
Okay.
And we're going to have our approval question. So approval, so we're going to have 3 different options here. And we're going to have, as our options, approve. We're going to have reject. And we're going to have request amendment. In which case we're going to send it back to the first step. So again, there's different outcomes here. The different outcomes are going to determine what questions display directly after that. So we're either going to have amendment comments or reason for rejection. And reason for rejection coming up. I'm just going to add one question here, just to level 2 approval, and then we'll crack on with our rules.
Very good.
I'll just make this a yes, no, just for expedience. So now we have all of our questions in place. And what we're going to do now is we're going to look at our business rules. And what I would always recommend doing is I would recommend going in, creating a test form, and taking a look at each step and visualizing what you want to have happen and where. So again, be mindful the type of rules you're going to be applying are question change rules, which fire on the trigger question where the question controller is updated, and then step level rules. So on submit or on save. So the first one I see here is straight off the bat is with the requester, I want to make this control read only. The user shouldn't be able to edit it. I want to hide other. Trigger point is here. So I'm going to apply my first question change rule on type. If type equals other,
okay,
show other. Moving down here, level 1 comments, they're not needed at the outset. They're only going to be needed should it pass back to this step, in which case they need to be read only. So I'm going to hide these and make them read only. So these are the first rules we're going to apply here. I'm going to close this out. I'm going to go into my initial step. So the requester, I'm going to go across here and I'm going to make that read only. Other, I'm going to hide it. And down here, level 1 comments, I'm going to hide it and make it read only. Next thing I want to do here is I want to go into type, and I know that's my trigger point. So I'm going to my trigger question to apply my question change rule. If type equals other, show other. And I go to my add rules, then you'll see all the rules that are available to you here for question change rules. A lot of depth here. The ones you're going to be using the most are workflow control rules, hide, show question, hide, show step. There's also all these data integration rules.
A lot of depth.
There's a lot of depth here. In reality, the ones you're going to use the most are, workflow control rules followed by some communication rules and so on. But there's a lot to choose from here. So for example, with tables, what you could do is you could export that table through into a native SharePoint list. You could append that list, overwrite the list, and so on as well. You could also map the table through to subsequent steps too. I know we're going to be working on tables a bit now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my hide show question rule. I'm on my trigger question. And this is using 100% no code. If I go edit conditions, and this is the important bit here. So if I go in and drill down into my first step, if type equals other, if that condition is fulfilled, I want to show other, which we've hidden by default. And I could be showing a block of actions, a combination of hide shows, enabling, disabling question controls. I could have multiple conditions, group conditions as well. So what I'd like to do here is I like to copy through the rule condition into the title here. And what that means is if I'm going back over a build that I haven't worked on in a while, or indeed it's a build someone else worked on, if I go in here and I select category, it defaults to question summary. If I select item, the same. If I select type, however, I can see there's a defined rule here. So you can see where your rules sit and why they sit where they sit. I can disable the rule, edit the rule, and so on. So it's all about context.
Very good.
The rules are embedded into baked into the single build interface. If I move down here into level 1 approver, I'm going to make them read only. I'm going to hide amendment comments and hide reason for rejection. They're not needed at the outset. The trigger point is here, another question change rule. If approval equals reject, I want to hide amendment comments and show reason for rejection. So we'll start with the reject. So I'm going to go hide show question. And this is just factoring in all the various different outcomes here. So edit conditions, drill down into my second step. If approval equals reject. So what you have to do here is you do have to kind of factor in the various different outcomes. So I know I want to hide amendment comments, but I want to show reason for rejection.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay. And what I like to do again here is you can copy through and paste that in here. So that's one outcome. Another outcome, hide show question. Edit conditions. If approval equals request amendment. Click OK. In this instance, what I want to do is I want to show amendment comments and I want to hide reason for rejection.
Yeah.
And the last outcome
makes sense
is if it's taken a happy path and approval is yes, or approve, I should say. approval equals approve. Click OK. In that case, I want to hide both amendment comments and reason for rejection. Okay. So again, if I go in here, create a test form, we can test that out and see if it's behaving itself. So if I go reject, reason for rejection. If I go request amendment, amendment comments. If I go approve, they're both gone.
Very good.
So those are my question change rules in place. What I want to look at next are my step level rules. Actually, there's one more question change rule I want to apply. In this one here, once an item is chosen, I want to use a get list data rule to pull through the description. So I'm going to make the description column read only. I'm going to go to my item column here, and that's my trigger point. That's sub question in my table. I'm going to go to add rules, data integration. I'm going to go into a get list data rule this time. I'm going to go into our category item list. I'm going to apply a filter. The filter is going to be where the item equals chosen item in my table here. And then I want to map in details again into my description column here in my table. So if I go in now, I just create a test form. Category A, item A1, there's my description. So again, it's a lot easier work with FlowForma with tables than a lot of the tools that are out there. What I'm going to apply next now is my step level rules. So what we have in place now are our question change rules. To apply step level rules, you need to go to the appropriate step. In this case here, we're going to go to level 1 approval. And there's a couple of things we want to do here. I want to go add rules. I want to do a pass back if approval is request amendment. So edit conditions, drill down. If approval equals request amendment, if that condition is fulfilled, I want to pass it back to details here. And you'll notice you're at step level because the events are completing, starting, and saving. Defaults to completing, which is when the user clicks submit. And again, good habit to get into is just to copy through into your title the condition of the rule. That's going to pass it back. But what we also want to do is we want to now show the comments we've hidden on the initial step and copy the comments back. So another add rules, again at step level. Edit conditions. Drill down. Approval equals request amendment. If that condition is fulfilled, we're going to now show the level 1 comments that are currently hidden on the initial step. And the last thing we want to do here is a set question value rule, where we're going to copy back to the first step the comments from the level 1 approver.
Okay.
Target question, level 1 comments, and in the expression builder here, I'm just going to select the source, which are the amendment comments here. And we're going to next is we're just going to create a form very quickly and see what we've got so far, and then we can add a few little refinements to it. Here we are, webinar approval process. And we're on our first step here. So category A, it's all good. Now in this as well, you can also copy. At the moment, we're just giving the level 1 approver permission to view the content on the initial step, but you can take all these fields and copy them through read only as well. Something I want to cover off as well is separators and the use of them, which we're going to touch on now once I've tested out everything here first. So category A, item A1, cost 1,000. Okay, that's all good. Click submit. And we also want to set up our approval levels. So if I go request amendment, click submit, it goes all the way back. So everything's working perfectly. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go back into my build. I'm going to add a little bit more functionality to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a rule in place here that determines what level of approval is required and when. So I'm going to go into my total here, which is a calculation. I'm going to go add rules. I'm going to use a hide show step rule. And my condition is going to be if the total is less than 1,000, I'm just going to show level 1 approval, but I'm going to hide level 2 approval. And another one, again, given that that one was for less than 1,000, this time the total is greater or equal to 1,000.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going to show both levels of approval. So if I go in just to test that very quickly here, you'll see that in action. So, okay, so we've got level 1, level 2 approval here. If I go for a cost of 600, back to level 1, if I bump that up, we now have level 2.
Very good.
What you can also do here is, and we're going to do it here in this one. In this case here, we know that if approval is rejected, we're going to kill off the form when the user clicks submit. So it won't go to level 2. So at this step level, I can use a hide show step question. Go edit conditions. Drill down. Approval equals reject. Now, if that happens, I want to hide the last step. What that means essentially is that if approval equals reject for the level 1 approver, the moment they click submit, i.e. the event is completing here, that form will close. There will not be a level 2 approval. And obviously you want to be able to send emails and communications here as well, which is very easy to do. So, if something is rejected, you may want to send a reason for rejection email. So you could go in here, add rules, communications, send email. And you could create a new email template here from scratch. And you could call it, for example, approval rejected. Now you could also put in the subject here, you can use a code ID token to be more specific with your subject matter, but you can personalize this as well. Here's the body of the email. You can pull through tokens here, dear requester.
Okay.
You could say approval process rejected. You could also put information through, additional questions, or you could say, you could just give them a link to the forum either. And so on. So that's your email here. And then you can decide who you want to send it to. In this case, we're going to send it to user defined in a question. It's going to be the requester. So you're letting them know the bad news here. What you do have to let them know the bad news subject to a condition. So in this case here, edit conditions. If I drill down here, approval equals reject. That's when that email wants to fire. That's when that email will go off. Now, what you can also do here is you can add separators which help kind of denote sections within the form. So if I go in here, I can have a separator sitting above the table, like so. And that's going to paste this in here. And that's just a graphical representation. You can impart information here very easily using a separator. And what I can do then is I can sit that separator directly above my table here. And then if I create a test form, you'll see it gives a nice kind of a It's kind of a clean user interface here as well. What I can also go in here and do too is I can go in here at this level and go into Visual Form Designer, and I can customize the look and feel of the form from here too. Default single column layout, I can go in here and I can work on the step colors, change it whatever color I wish, change my background color, change my step font color. I can change the question controls as well, the colors of the question controls when you interact with those to align with that too. And I covered off the generate document capabilities here. You can see what you can do here. It's very easy to work with this in Word. So for example, if I were to just come in here, this is the document that's been uploaded to my document templates library. I can come in here and select any question here I want and cursor position where I want this to appear in the generated document. What we can also do as well is apply our rules as well, which means that this content, for example, here will only display if other is chosen. So it says display selected section when this condition is true. And I can have combinations of or and ors and loads of different scenarios here built in. The document then essentially expands or contracts to reflect the instance in which it is generated. One other thing I wanted to cover off very quickly before I wrap up my segment here is there's also FlowForma Engage, which is very easy to work with as well. So FlowForma Engage allows you to engage third parties either anonymously or securely within a process. So I can go in here and I can decide, for example, if my initial step is to be engaged with anonymously, in which case then I can generate a token. That token can be shared with externals. It could just be a link on your website. So any member of the public then can engage with that initial step in a process anonymously. It might be used, say, for new supplier onboarding. It might be used for feedback and so on. What you also have in place here as well is, this is all about empowering process owners to build. We also have a governance hub here as well, which allows you to go in and as an IT administrator, control what environments are provisioned and by whom, who has access to those environments, and also what processes are promoted from which environment through to the next. You have visibility and control over that. What you also have in place here as well is it's not just about the speed which you can build out a process, it's also the emphasis we place on managing and maintaining those as well. You can apply SLAs and times to completion at step level in a process, and then you can go into what's called process performance here, and that will give you as an administrator a visual representation of how all the forms in this environment are performing relative to predefined SLAs. So if there's a process that is causing a problem, you can drill down, see where the issue is, highlighted in red here, and I can go in and reassign these forms either to myself or to somebody else. And what you can also do, you can also build into the logic of the process the ability to automatically reassign using what's called work items. So if a predefined amount of time has elapsed, you can automatically reassign, or you can go in on an ad hoc basis into process performance here and do that. So again, it's not just about the speed at which you can build, it's also the importance that you place on managing the forms that are spun out from it. And that's
Well done, David.
That's me done. Is there any questions coming through?
Okay, well done. Congratulations.
No worries.
Yeah, there was actually two or three questions there that you answered.
Sure.
As part of, can we use different colors and designs? There's questions around can externals be included in the flow? One question which I can answer actually is, how quickly can you get up and running? We have a Sure Start implementation program, which includes 2 days of comprehensive training, as well as working with our customers to get the first flow up and running and live and then into live production. On average, that takes 4 weeks. So that's all it takes to actually take a flow on average and get it into live production where you're experiencing time to value very, very quick, just on average of 4 weeks. Okay, so well done again, Dave. We're going to pass you back to Connor. I don't know if you've picked up any other questions, Connor, before we wrap up.
Yeah, so we had loads of questions come in. I know, Dave, you were under a bit of time constraints there. And as Stewart mentioned, you answered a couple of them as you were working along there. So congrats again. That's 4 from 4 on your builds. Great stuff. Yeah, so I suppose there is a few questions coming in here. One of them here is, do you have any tips which can help us to prioritize which process to automate? Maybe that's one, Stewart, you could take.
Yep, no worries. I would say it's got to be a process that is not too complex to begin with, okay? Because what you want to do is you want to get a quick adoption in the business. So I would suggest that you begin with a simple flow that you can instantly roll out to the business, that you can show that it's a huge success. Then you get buy-in. And then I would say the second one, which is more or less the high impact process, that one follows the more simple, easy one. So I would do it in that order. We have other customers who take on highly complex, highly sophisticated to begin with. It works as well, but in the main, start with a simple one and then take on a more sophisticated, more complex as a second one.
Okay, I know we're very short on time, so there's just another couple of quick questions. Our processes often need changes. Could I make these changes in-house with FlowForma tool, Dave? I think you might have covered that off, but
Yeah,
might just to reassure them.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so you have your governance hub there as well, which allows you to manage and maintain what processes are built where. So you might have something, if you want to make changes, you might bring it into a, say, sandbox environment before bringing it through to UAT, and then into production, so you can do all that. It's an agile tool, which means as well you can build on the fly. You can make your changes instantaneously rather than waiting for IT to have the resources to do it for you.
Okay, it's just time for two more maybe. I've got a lot of staff in remote areas. Would the FlowForma tool work for remote users? And maybe that's one, Dave, you could cover off maybe as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, a lot of remote users might be using mobile devices. They may have offline issues as well. So, you know, it's mobile enabled, iOS and Android, together with offline capabilities.
Okay, we might have time for just one more. So how soon could I see an ROI from implementing FlowForma? I think you may have covered that off, Stewart, earlier in the slides before.
Yeah, I mean, we've got examples of very quick time to values. One that springs to mind is a biopharmaceutical company based in Switzerland. They had an HR onboarding process, which they only spent from starting it to actually getting it into live production, 22 hours worth of work. It was spread across just short of a 4-week period. So it is really quick.
Great. I think, I know we didn't get a lot of questions in throughout. I'm sorry if we didn't get to them, but Dave was in the zone and we didn't get a chance to get them across to him. So yeah, our experts will be in contact with you in the next few days to get those or any questions that you had answered for you. And apologies again if we didn't quite get to them throughout today's session. But yeah, I mean, a quick reminder as well that you can book a one-to-one call with us or with one of our process experts, or indeed you can sign up for a free 14-day trial, and that's at www.flowforma.com, our website. And our experts there are more than happy to help you steer your digital transformation project in the right direction. So be sure to reach out with any of those questions or queries that you may have. And just a quick reminder as well, just to say that there's a very short feedback form at the end of this webinar today. If you could take maybe 30 seconds just to fill that out first, it'd be really appreciated. And I think we're all out on time. So I just want to say thanks very much to Stewart and Dave today. And once again, well done on the success. That's 4 from 4. So just want to say thank you very much for your time and everyone as well who joined us today and for those great questions and comments throughout. And thank you all. And we hope to get you again for another workshop in the future. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.